and Ali Murchison from the Canadian Red Cross. I'm also accompanied by the Regional Emergency Manager, Jason Cooling from Region 11 here in the Capital Region, and the Operations Manager, Stacey Cooling, who works in the Provincial Ops Center. Dressed this way because I've just had a chance to travel throughout the Grand Lake region and visit some of the very important operations that are going on out there. I'll start with just a couple of statements in French. Excuse me. Les niveaux d'eau vont demeurer élevés au cours de la prochaine jour dans toutes les régions entre Fredericton et Saint-Jean. Les gens doivent rester vigilants. Il n'est toujours pas recommandé de faire de la navigation. Les courants sont forts. Et il y a encore des débris importants qui flottent sur la rivière. Il faut être vigilant sur les routes, même si l'eau diminue. Les routes peuvent avoir été endommagées. Nous continuons de fournir de l'aide à ceux qui en ont besoin avec l'aide des autorités locales, provinciales et fédérales. The water levels remain high, and they will remain high over the coming days in most of the affected regions of the southern part of the province in the St. John Basin. So we're asking people to continue to be vigilant and to avoid any activities on the water. It's a beautiful day, but we don't want folks boating because there is still a lot of concerns about the river. The currents are very strong, and there's virtually every kind of debris imaginable floating in our river system. So we're continuing to provide the assistance that's been described over the last several days to those who require it. And of course, this is harnessing local authorities, federal and provincial. We continue to be supported by the Canadian Red Cross, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Transport Canada, and they're all continuing to provide assistance where it's most needed. Of course, the conversations and the coordination continues with the RCMP, the Coast Guard, and the Armed Forces regarding any needs for additional relief support. Now, of course, the greatest concern, as you would expect, is in the south right now, and we're continuing to monitor those waterways, but we're also paying attention to the rest of the province. You may have heard that the Madawaska River in our north, the water level increased over the weekend. And that is in part due to water that's coming into the St. John River system up there from the Témiscouata Dam in Quebec. And I just want to reassure everybody that like the dams in New Brunswick, Quebec Power with their dam in Témiscouata is being particularly careful about the water that they're releasing, which they describe as being essentially the same type of water in terms of levels and amounts going through that dam as would have been experienced in 2008. So it is being, of course, a contribution to our river systems, but it's being managed extremely carefully, as you would appreciate. Now, the water levels have since decreased in the north, but the situation up there bears close monitoring. And we do have a regional emergency manager up there with staff to ensure that any response activities required up there will occur if necessary. And so we're continuing throughout the entire province to keep an eye on things. Now, about evacuees, residents who've already evacuated, again, please register with the Red Cross. Even if you don't need anything from them, we want to know who you are and what your circumstances are so that subsequently we'll be able to provide assistance as comes necessary. These are statistics from the Red Cross. To date, 488 households consisting of 1,158 people are registered with the Red Cross. The Canadian Red Cross has an appeal for donations to support those affected by the flood. And if you have any specific questions about any matters of Red Cross, please speak with Ali Murchison, who's here in the room. Of course, Mr. Dasuki will be talking specifics about roads and the conditions and the constraints imposed by closures. but suffice to say, the floodwaters continue to impact a number of roads. Trans-Canada Highway 2 is still closed between Moncton and Fredericton and will remain so for at least the coming days.
Please plan accordingly. And also, please continue to monitor the Riverwatch website for the latest information, as the new forecast is posted every day. C'est important de noter que lorsque les niveaux d'eau commencent à diminuer, les eaux d'inondation ne vont pas disparaître d'un jour à l'autre. Ceci va prendre beaucoup de temps, plusieurs jours ou même plus. Donc, s'il vous plaît, planifiez en conséquence, ce n'est pas fini tout de suite. Donc, je vous encourage à consulter le site du programme de surveillance des cours d'eau pour les informations les plus récentes. Merci. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Mr. Ahmed Dasuki from DTI. Ahmed.
Thank you, Director, and thank you all. Trans-Canada Highway remains closed to through traffic from exit 306 in Oromocto and exit 423 in Riverglade. The detour route remains in place. This will continue for the next few days. Route 10 west of the bridge in Chipman remains closed. Bronson Settlement Road is available for emergency vehicles, half-tons, and heavier vehicles. This is not a designated road, and there is a risk it will deteriorate beyond use if there's too much traffic on it. Please stay off unless it's necessary. CN continues to run an emergency shuttle bus to the community. Over the weekend and into this morning, there have been reports of traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian, crossing bridges that have been closed due to high water. I cannot stress enough how dangerous this is. These bridges have been closed for public safety and to maintain the integrity of the structure. Critical component of these structures are underwater, and we cannot assess their integrity until the water levels recede. All traffic, including pedestrian traffic, must stay off these bridges. As an example, 1 cubic meter of water equals 1 ton of weight on the structure. That's a significant stress on the structure. And until we can inspect all components of the underside, we cannot confirm the structure's integrity. There have been a lot of discussions within the department of how to proceed with reopening roads and bridges over once water levels recede. Each asset will need to be inspected to ensure its safety and integrity. We are currently prioritizing the order in which those inspections will occur. The first assets to be inspected will be those with the most impact on our transportation network. Our first priority will be the restoration of transportation links in isolated communities. From there, we will prioritize based on factors such as the length of the detours, how long has the asset been closed, the volume of traffic that has been impacted, or for any other reason. We have reached out to other jurisdictions, both the federal government and municipalities, for assistance in the recovery process. Right now, we are focused on public safety. Once the water recedes, we will be focused on restoration of transportation links. We continue to make every attempt to communicate road closures and detours to the public, and we appreciate the media's help in doing so. I urge people to check on mb511.ca for the latest up-to-date road closures. Drive with caution in areas where water is over the road. Watch out for wildlife, and please do not stop in traffic to take photographs. We thank the public for their continued patience and cooperation as we respond to this unprecedented flooding. Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed. We have Mike Carr from St. John EMO on the line. Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I am, Director. Thank you. We just want to reaffirm that the safety of our residents, members of St. John EMO, and all the responding agencies is our #1 priority. We have ramped up our safety, especially in those areas involving volunteers. We are labeling today as peak day. The latest information we have received from MB Riverwatch is that today's high tide at 6:30 could be our peak flood level and conditions in the St. John region, with waters beginning to recede very slowly over the next few days. Water levels will continue to fluctuate based off our daily tidal impacts, of course, but maximum high tide levels are also receding this week. Citizens are urged to continue to exercise extreme caution as the flood conditions will persist locally for the foreseeable future. With respect to our water and sewer services, we have not received any reports of loss of water or sewer services, and St. John water crews are working around the clock to keep those customers connected. And drinking water testing is ongoing and reports are good. 15 roads are being monitored, with many of them closed at this time, with 2 that were new from last night. Updates on that are provided on our mobile app and the city website. City crews successfully built up a section of the Westville Road yesterday, as reported, but they've also done the same on Bay Street for one section that was affected with the rising water last night. The St. John Police Force continue patrol areas and are stationed at some of the key road closure areas with barricades. I'd like to provide a safety message from MA Southern. They like to remind residents in the Westfield Road area that the railroad line is active at this time, and there are freight trains running in and out of that area daily at different times of day. Never walk or along the tracks. It does pose a serious risk to public safety and for that of rail operations. It's not only dangerous, but it is illegal. And the railroad is not designed for pedestrian or any other forms of traffic. So only cross the tracks at designated crossing areas and always look both ways before crossing. If you do need emergency evacuation, we still subscribe to the 911 system. And the safety message consistent with rail safety is stay off, stay away, and stay safe. Wellness checks in the city. Crews in St. John EMO and St. John Energy continue to make wellness checks by water for those in isolated areas and within the recommended evacuation areas. We had 45 visits for isolated areas that were completed yesterday, and we've set a target of 30 more today, wind being a factor in both north and west areas. And we are also providing a crisis hotline information when we do those wellness checks. We still have 2 boats deployed by Cook Aquaculture. Thanks again, and today in supporting this ongoing effort. And on board, we also have emergency services to assist. The Canadian Coast Guard has maintained a presence on the waterway and are in place to respond to emergencies, but they are also assisting us in traversing flooded roadways. We also have stood up a recovery team to begin developing a recovery plan for critical infrastructure in St. John and for all of its effective citizens and businesses. St. John Energy has 40 customers that have been disconnected. They do remain available to support requests for disconnects and are considering how and when to conduct service reconnects. They have mapped disconnects with those that have evacuated to conduct checks on their homes and water levels around meters, and they will continue with their inspections of flooded properties. From Emergency Social Services, affected residents are being directed to contact Red Cross and go to the Carleton Community Center Reception Center between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. for registration. And outside these hours, they are asked to call the 1-800 number at 1-800-863-6582. As of this morning, we have 110 households, which is 263 people in St. John that have registered with the Canadian Red Cross, and 43 people have been accommodated. We do have our 3 sandbag locations up and running, but we're not actively recruiting more volunteers at this time. However, for all resources, we are maintaining an inventory of offers in the event that they are needed in the recovery phase. Please go to www.stjohn.ca for the most current information on flooding in St. John. And that's all there is to report at this time. Thank you from St. John.
Thank you, Mike. Lots of great information there. We'll now hear from Mr. Wayne Tellen from Fredericton EMO.
Thank you, Director. As of 8:15 this morning, the waters in Fredericton were at 8.023 meters. These river levels are expected to remain around the 8-meter mark through till Thursday. We have been getting some questions about Fredericton drinking water and if it's safe to drink during the flood. Yes, it is absolutely safe to drink. Our water distribution system is pressurized, and water can only travel out and not in. We also maintain a chlorine residual as added protection. In the very unlikely event that the system did become contaminated, an alert would be sent to all users immediately. The park and ride shuttle service will continue until at least Wednesday, and the transit will remain free as well. We continue to ask people to respect the barricades. 7 tickets have been issued, and now our police force has asked us to take plate numbers and description of drivers and forward that to them for their enforcement. While St. John River levels are predicted to remain well above flood levels for the next few days, the City of Fredericton Emergency Measures Organization is working on a flood recovery plan. Just because the waters recede does not mean we can open the streets right away. Please be patient as we work to make sure they are once again safe for vehicular traffic. The city will be offering a special debris pickup service for those in the flooded areas. And for more information, please go to our city's website, Fredericton.ca, /Riverwatch. Thank you.
So we are getting to a point where, as you're hearing reported, river levels are becoming stable and not anticipated to change dramatically upward. There will be a discernible eventual diminution in the levels over time, and it'll take a number of days. But people will start turning their thoughts to recovery, as we call it, in the last phase of emergency management. And that is a difficult phase, and it's a phase of discovery based on inspection, based on a lot of considerations about what is safe to be done and what needs to be done to return to normalcy. This is a period of time when people do need to be patient. They need to understand that it is as deliberate an operation to go back as it is to get out. And it's important that people understand that it is equally serious and complex to plan and execute, but those things will be done in detail. And you've heard from municipal officials that it's happening within their municipalities, and I'm here to assure you that the same activity is happening provincially for everybody impacted by this. Are there any questions? Yes.
Do we have numbers in terms of people affected, number of residents? We've been talking about this for 12 days now, and we have no concrete number of people really affected by this. And do you have any idea about the costs of these floods? I know we've talked about the comparing with 2008, but now with the operations that are going on, what do you think?
Well, to answer your first question, and I've answered this question before, the number of people displaced is the sum total of those that evacuated before, evacuated just in time, and were assisted in evacuating during this event. I do not have a number I can give you. I've given you numbers about people that have registered as evacuees. That represents a certain percentage, but those people that have made a choice early on to self-evacuate and go and live with friends and family, we want them to register as well, so we have a sense. It is certainly a significant number. You've heard approximately 1,200 people are registered. That number, I wouldn't even hazard a guess, might be double that though, for those that have self-evacuated and just took care of themselves.
You know, Mr. McCallum, we've been talking about this, 1,900 people in the St. John area that would be affected by these floods, plus the people here in Fredericton,
Yes.
the townships, and all of this.
Yes.
What would be the number of New Brunswickers that have been affected?
Okay, well, first of all, the number 1,900 in St. John was speculative based on an anticipated number of areas that would be impacted and to what degree they would be. But just to reiterate, some left, some stayed. How many are impacted? If you want me to put a number on it, I can't in any kind of infinite detail. But yes, it is likely approaching 2,000 to 3,000, very conservative estimate. But we won't know that for a while. And to answer your second question, I'm sorry, but I have to give you much the same answer. Until we can assess the damage and account for all the damage, municipally, individual homes, government response, the participation of all the agencies that were involved, we're not crunching numbers to come up with a price tag for this event yet, because it's virtually impossible. It's still going on. When we know, we'll certainly tell you. By virtue of just the difference in value of money, it'll be higher, I would suspect. I think that's a pretty accurate statement to make. Again, the order of magnitude, how much more? I mean, for those of you who haven't heard this, you know, I've heard the number 24 million thrown around. Well, that represents $24 million in 2008, in 2008 dollars. So if you want to do a little bit of math, and I'm too tired to do that right now, if you want to do some math, think in terms of this exceeding that in real money.
What advice would you give people who are staying in their homes because they're worried about meters?
People will make their own individual choices, and that's based on their own individual sort of sense of security. We are doing a considerable amount of what I call presence patrolling in all the areas that have been evacuated. So at least I want them to be confident that someone is keeping an eye on their neighborhoods, and they have already successfully stopped one looting incident. I'm sure you've heard about that. I don't think this is a big issue, but anybody who's contemplating, you know, trying to be an opportunist and take advantage of this situation, I'm warning them that there is security elements about, and they will be found, apprehended, and prosecuted. And I want to reassure the citizens that we're taking that part of this as just as serious.
Is there any new information for people who have recreational properties that maybe have disaster relief maybe open up to them?
I know this is a question that's being asked by many people. And the Disaster Financial Assistance Program that we have in place in the province and have used a number of times doesn't address any assistance to recreational property. Now, this is a different scenario where many impacts are on recreational properties. This is something that is under consideration by government. I do not have any indication whether there's what the intention is about that, but government is aware and sensitive to this particular magnitude of this issue and are certainly considering options as to how they would address that demand.
There's a lot going on, but do you have a sense of a timeline of how long it would take for a decision to be made on that?
I really have no sense of that. I know that it's certainly being discussed by senior officials today.
You said the worst could be behind us.
I don't think I said that.
Anyway, the level of water should be getting down a little
Yes.
in the next couple of days. Do you have any idea how long it could take from now for people to get back home?
When we talk about the water going down, that is not a trigger for people to go home necessarily. As I mentioned briefly, a very deliberate process has to be followed to make sure it's safe for them to go home. To answer your question, in some cases, it may be a matter of days after the water levels are below flood stage. In some cases, it'll be weeks before people will have a clear indication of what they can possibly do.
Perhaps a question for Monsieur Suki regarding the Trans-Canada. You're talking about still a few days of closure. I'm sure the trucking industry wants to perhaps have a little bit more precise details. How do you see the coming situation?
As you know, the Trans-Canada Highway runs throughout the country, and having it closed for that many days have impact on everybody, whether it's commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, emergency vehicles. The number one thing is that MRDC, our P3 operator on the highway, wants to ensure that the highway is safe for use before it opens again. So that's the number one priority. Two, we've been in contact with the APTA, the Association of New Brunswick for Trucking. We've been asking them, we've been liaising with them to see what kind of impact that has on their trucking, and working with them to see what we can do to ensure, working with them to see what their concerns are throughout this event. But at the end of the day, the highway has to be safe before it's open. I think that's really the critical aspect here.
How badly damaged is the Trans-Canada? Do you have a sense of that?
Right now, I think that question is more appropriate for MRDC themselves because they manage that stretch of highway, but I do know that they're out there right now assessing or trying to figure out what kind of damage there is, and once they know, you can probably reach out to them directly and have that question answered by them. But my understanding is that with the heavy winds that happened the other day, with the water slashing onto the highway, that potentially caused some damage, as well as the water did go over the lanes for a few days. What kind of damage it is or how big it is, that'll be a question for MRDC to answer for you.
Is it dry now, or is it still water?
I don't know exactly what it is right now. Okay.
Just been through there. On the westbound side, water from Grand Lake has encroached onto the road, as well as a lot of debris. That's why, it's closed to traffic, obviously, in addition to the fact that there might be erosion underneath.
Do we know of any assets that for sure won't be reopened right away because of damage?
Our crews, our regional crews and engineers and the technical people are out there right now trying to inspect as much as they could and see if water is receding in the area. They're trying to get out there as soon as they can to see what the impact is on the roads. Whether it's Trans-Canada Highway or a road in a subdivision, we got to make sure the road is safe before we open it and make sure what's under the road is also in proper shape to accept the traffic on the top of it.
But you can say if there's some assets that already you can see that this is not going to be opening.
An example to that question would be Route 144. The culvert is gone by the rail there, so that will involve putting up a new culvert and or whatever the department decides to do, what the repair is in that area. But yeah, so that'd be an area where it's going to be a while or until a culvert is. I don't know exactly the area. It's up in the northwest part of the province. We'll probably get you that information later. Yeah, I think it's the Edmundston area.
So, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, DTI put in, I think it was in Dieppe on Acadia Drive. It was a swampy area, and they really used some new technology to fix that road and make sure it doesn't, go lower over time. I assume Trans-Canada was built new 20 years ago. It's probably lowered. Is that something that you would consider? Is there going to be a major, beyond just a regular fix, are you going to actually try and build something there that will withstand future flooding?
In which area?
On the Trans-Canada.
I think that discussion, what happened in the future on there, I'm not sure we have had that discussion yet in the department, but that's certainly something we can take into consideration, bring it forward to MRDC and our crew at DTI for sure.
Does that complicate the fact that, you have this P3 arrangement in place?
I think that's a question for future, as we assess the damage on the highway, see what's going on. I think at the end of the day, they want to make sure the highway is safe for the use of the public, and that's where the concern is right now, opening the Trans-Canada Highway.
Sure. Hier, dans la région de Fredericton Nord, une résidence sur la rue Brunswick.
Oui.
Il y a une maison qui a eu un affaissement, il y a un trou, une circonférence de 5 pieds, une profondeur de 4 pieds, arrivé hier. Les résidents nous ont dit que c'était en raison des inondations, cet affaissement. Est-ce que vous avez entendu parler de cet affaissement et est-ce qu'il pourrait en avoir d'autres, des affaissements comme cela?
J'ai eu l'avis juste avant la réunion ici, puis des gens de travaux publics. Ils sont là présentement pour faire un assessment de la situation. Ils vont me rapporter qu'est-ce qu'il y a à faire pour arranger le trou.
Dans le passé, en 2008, 1973, que ça avait résulté à des affaissements de terrain à des trous dans le dune, sur la chaussée.
Je ne suis pas au courant de ça, non.
I'm not aware of that, no.
On Ross Terrace, a resident's driveway. There's a sinkhole and their public works are looking at it right now.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we continue. We continue to sustain and maintain operations in the name of public safety and security. And things are slowly, gradually looking up in terms of getting back to different work and repairs. So we'll do this again tomorrow. We'll provide regular updates. And we would ask the media to stay informed, remain safe, pay attention to all things electrical and those sort of issues with regard to their personal safety if they're at their homes. And of course, we want to remind the motorists about safety. Thank you all very much for your attention. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you all, folks. Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Thanks, Director.
How many days this operation so far?
Of like doing these media briefings.
Oh, did the first one on the 25th of April. So what is it,
Yeah.
12 days?
And was that the first day of flooding or the second day of flooding?
No, that was the day before.
So